A silent sentinel orbits our planet, a relic from the dawn of civilization. This is the legend of the Black Knight satellite, one of history's most perplexing space mysteries. By the end of this journey, you will uncover the startling truth behind an object said to watch us from the void. We will trace its path from Nikola Tesla's first intercepted signal to grainy astronaut photographs, navigating a web of Cold War secrets and whispers of ancient astronauts. Why have governments been so quick to dismiss it, and what might a 13,000-year-old star map reveal about our past? What does our need for a silent watcher in the sky truly say about us? The high desert air of Colorado Springs crackled with a new kind of energy in 1899. Nikola Tesla, a man perpetually chasing the future, had established a remote laboratory to conduct his most ambitious experiments yet. His goal was to transmit electrical power without wires across vast distances, but what he recorded one night would send a ripple through time itself. While monitoring the chaotic symphony of atmospheric radio noise, his sensitive equipment picked up a signal that stood out from the rest. It was not the random static of a lightning storm or the familiar patterns of terrestrial sources. This was something different, something structured. 3 distinct clicks would sound, followed by a pause, and then repeat in the same precise order. To Tesla's brilliant and pattern-seeking mind, this was not natural interference. He became convinced he was listening to an intelligent transmission, a deliberate message. He would later publicly speculate that he had intercepted a communication from another world, perhaps Mars. This event, occurring decades before the first artificial satellite was even a dream, planted a profound and unsettling seed. If Tesla, one of the greatest scientific minds of his era, believed something was deliberately signaling us from the cosmos, what else might be silently circling in the dark above, waiting for us to finally look up? Years later, a new wave of peculiar encounters began, not from a lone genius in a laboratory, but from countless hobbyists in their own homes. Across Europe and America, amateur radio enthusiasts were experimenting with shortwave signals, bouncing their transmissions off the ionosphere to communicate across continents. Yet some began noticing something impossible. Their own voices, or the coded dots and dashes they sent, would return to them seconds later as a clear, distinct echo. This was not the immediate bounce they understood. The delay was far too long, suggesting their signal had traveled an immense, inexplicable distance before being reflected back. The scientific community was baffled. Prominent physicists like Carl Stormer and Balthasar van der Pol documented these strange long-delayed echoes, or LDEs, searching for a logical cause. Could atmospheric conditions somehow trap a signal and release it later? Or was there a solid object, a silent, unseen reflector, orbiting far beyond our atmosphere? These persistent echoes, reported for over a decade, created a tangible sense of mystery in the airwaves. They suggested we were not alone in the void, that something unknown was sharing our sky, a ghost in the machine of early radio. This collective experience, long before any talk of satellites, laid the crucial groundwork for a legend waiting to be born. 2 decades after the last mysterious radio echo faded into static, the abstract whispers of the unknown were given a name and a shape. In 1954, the American public opened their morning newspapers to a startling headline. The St. Louis Post-Dispatch declared that the United States Air Force had detected 1 or possibly 2 unidentified satellites circling our planet. This was not a speculative science fiction story, it was presented as fact. The San Francisco Examiner echoed the report, sending a ripple of genuine alarm through a nation already on edge. The world was locked in the Cold War, a silent, terrifying struggle for technological supremacy. The Soviet Union was the only conceivable rival, and the idea that they had secretly placed an object in the heavens was a chilling prospect. This was not just a scientific curiosity, it was a potential spy platform, a silent eye in the sky watching every military move. It was in this climate of fear and suspicion that the object earned its legendary name, the Black Knight. The title was perfect, evoking a silent, dark, and menacing observer, a lone knight clad not in shining armor but in the void of space itself. Here was a tangible mystery, officially acknowledged and wrapped in the paranoia of the age. If it was not ours and it was not theirs, then whose silent sentinel was passing overhead in the dead of night? Into this atmosphere of official silence and public anxiety stepped a man whose credentials made him impossible to ignore. Major Donald Keyhoe was no fringe theorist. He was a decorated Marine Corps naval aviator, a man who had served his country and understood the culture of military secrecy from the inside. When he began speaking out, people listened. Using his platform as a director of the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, Keyhoe became a relentless voice asserting that the government knew far more about the unknown than it was telling. He wrote extensively in magazines and books, arguing that the Air Force was actively covering up evidence, not just of flying saucers but of objects in orbit. He pointed directly to the 1954 satellite reports, insisting they were not Soviet in origin and that their true nature was being suppressed. His military background gave his claims a powerful weight, transforming the discussion from a wild rumor into a serious question of public trust. Keyhoe masterfully framed the mystery not merely as a scientific puzzle, but as a conspiracy of silence. He suggested that the authorities feared the truth was too unsettling for the public to handle, that the confirmation of an alien presence, or perhaps a technology far older than our own, would shatter the established order. This added a thrilling and deeply provocative new layer to the Black Knight legend. It was no longer just about what was up there, it was about what they were hiding down here. The question shifted from what is that object to why are they lying to us about it? While the legend of the Black Knight grew in the shadows of conspiracy, the United States government eventually offered a concrete answer. Their explanation pointed to a very real and historically significant object in the sky. In December of 1958, just a year after the Soviet Union shocked the world with Sputnik, the United States launched its own response, a satellite named Project Score. This was not just any piece of technology, it was the world's very first communications satellite, a massive, cylindrical craft that famously broadcast a Christmas message from President Eisenhower back to Earth. But its design and its fate in orbit are crucial to our mystery. Project Score was not a sleek, stabilized sphere. It was essentially the entire final stage of its rocket, a long, bulky cylinder tumbling end over end as it traveled. This erratic, wobbling motion meant it did not follow a predictable, smooth path like a typical satellite. To the early, rudimentary tracking systems on the ground, this tumbling object could present a highly unusual and confusing radar signature. Its odd shape and motion could easily account for strange readings. Furthermore, its purpose was to transmit signals, and its broadcasts could have been picked up by amateur radio operators, creating the very echoes and anomalous contacts that fueled the early reports. On the surface, this was a perfect, logical debunking. The official narrative suggested that the mysterious satellite sightings from the 1950s were simply early, misidentified encounters with Project Score. Yet for those who believed in the Black Knight, this explanation created more questions than it answered. The most glaring problem was one of simple timing. The original wave of satellite sightings, the ones reported in newspapers and that sparked the initial Air Force concern, occurred in 1954. Project Score, however, was not launched until the very end of 1958, a gap of 4 full years. How could a satellite that did not yet exist be responsible for sightings that happened years before its launch? Believers argued that this was not a case of honest misidentification, but a deliberate attempt to muddy the waters, to take a genuine mystery and cover it with a convenient, albeit anachronistic, explanation. The government's answer failed to address the core of the legend, the initial sightings that occurred in a vacuum of human space technology. If Project SCORE was the answer, then what exactly were those trained military personnel and sophisticated tracking stations seeing in our skies in the years before anyone had ever put an object into orbit? The official story, rather than laying the mystery to rest, only deepened the conviction that someone was not telling the whole truth. Decades after those strange echoes faded into history, a Scottish astronomer decided to apply a new kind of logic to the old mystery. Duncan Lunan, working in the 1970s, revisited the baffling, long-delayed echo data from the 1920s. He asked a simple but radical question. What if the echoes were not a natural phenomenon or a random glitch, but a deliberate message, and the delay itself was the medium? Lunan began plotting the reported echo delays against a star chart, searching for a pattern. His startling conclusion, published in the journal Spaceflight, sent a shockwave through the scientific community. He claimed the delay times were not random at all. When graphed, they formed a precise map of the star system Epsilon Boötis as it would have appeared from Earth 13,000 years ago. This was not just a general shape, it was a specific celestial blueprint. Lunan went further, proposing a translation. He interpreted the data as a message from the probe itself, a greeting that read, in his words, "Start here. Our home is Epsilon Boötis, a double star. We live on the sixth planet of 7. Check that, the sixth planet of 7, counting outward from the Sun. Our probe is in the position of Arcturus, known in our maps." The implications were staggering. An ancient, automated probe had been sitting in a polar orbit around our world since the last ice age, patiently waiting for humanity to develop the technology to hear its call. It was a lonely sentinel, a time capsule from a civilization that looked to the stars while our own ancestors were painting in caves. For a moment, the mystery seemed solved in the most spectacular way possible. The excitement, however, was short-lived. The scientific method demands that results be repeatable, and other researchers struggled to replicate Lunan's star map using the same echo data. Critics pointed out that the original data from the 1920s was itself spotty and inconsistent, open to multiple interpretations. Lunan himself, in a remarkable display of intellectual honesty, later retracted his specific interpretation, stating that he no longer believed the data supported the Epsilon Boötis map. Yet he never abandoned the core idea that the echoes were artificial. His work, even retracted, remains a cornerstone of the Black Knight legend. It transformed the satellite from a mere object into a storyteller, a vessel carrying a message from the deep past. It asked a question that still hangs in the air. If his first map was wrong, could the right one still be out there, waiting to be decoded? Every legend needs an icon, a single image that etches itself into the public mind. For the Black Knight, that moment arrived in December of 1998, high above the Earth. The astronauts of the Space Shuttle Endeavour on the STS-88 mission were conducting the first assembly flights for the new International Space Station. During one of their spacewalks, a crew member's camera captured something unexpected. There, silhouetted against the brilliant blue and white curve of our planet, was a dark, tumbling object. It was not a star or a distant spacecraft. It was close and it was bizarre. The object appeared as a jagged, black shape, a collection of sharp angles and irregular protrusions. It looked less like a natural piece of space debris and more like a piece of a broken machine, a fragment of some unknown craft. For thousands seeing the photo online years later, this was not a question of radar echoes or old newspaper clippings. This was visual, undeniable proof. Here was the Black Knight caught on film. NASA, of course, had a ready and mundane explanation. The agency identified the object as a thermal blanket, a piece of multilayer insulation that had been lost during the very same spacewalk. These blankets are essential for protecting astronauts and equipment from the extreme temperatures of space, and they are often secured with Velcro and other fittings. A loose blanket tumbling in the zero-gravity environment would present exactly the kind of dark, crumpled, and angular shape seen in the photograph. Its size was consistent with a lost piece of equipment, not a massive alien probe. The official story was simple, logical, and rooted in the messy reality of human spaceflight, where items can and do drift away. Yet for believers, the official explanation felt deeply unsatisfying. The object in the photograph did not look soft or fabric-like. Its edges appeared too hard, its geometry too structured. It resembled a chunk of shattered armor or a fractured piece of technology. Why would a lost blanket, designed to be flexible, maintain such sharp, artificial-looking angles? This single image became the modern face of the Black Knight precisely because it bypassed complex scientific arguments and spoke directly to our pattern-seeking brains. We look at that dark shape against the Earth and we see intent, we see design. It is a Rorschach test in the void, and for many, it clearly depicts a silent, ancient artifact watching our first tentative steps into the cosmic ocean. This photograph cemented the legend in the digital age, transforming it from a story you heard into something you could see with your own eyes, a ghost made solid against the infinite backdrop of space. The grainy photograph gave the legend a face, but its true mystery lies in the path it supposedly travels. Among the most compelling details repeated about the Black Knight is its reported orbit, a path that defied the technological norms of its time. While early Soviet and American satellites were launched into relatively low inclination orbits circling the Earth's equator, the Black Knight was said to be in a polar orbit. This is a very specific and powerful trajectory. Imagine a satellite that does not simply loop around the planet's waistline. Instead, it flies from pole to pole, passing directly over the north and south poles with each revolution. As the Earth rotates slowly beneath this path, the satellite eventually passes over every single inch of the globe, from the densest cities to the most remote deserts and ice caps. For a surveillance platform, this is the ultimate vantage point. It is the perfect orbit for a watchful eye that wants to see everything. This single reported characteristic added a layer of profound credibility to the story in the minds of many. Why? Because in the 1950s and early 60s, no nation on Earth had the proven capability to launch a satellite into such a precise and demanding polar orbit. The first official American satellite to achieve a polar orbit was not launched until 1960. The idea that an unknown object was already performing this complex maneuver years or even decades before it became standard practice suggested a technology far beyond our own. It was a detail that felt too specific, too strategically perfect to be a simple coincidence. This factoid became a cornerstone of the legend, repeated in books and documentaries as clear proof of the object's extraordinary nature. Yet when you trace this claim back to its source, the trail grows cold. Those original newspaper reports from 1954, while alarming, do not contain specific orbital data. The military tracking stations of the era were primitive, and while they could detect an object, pinpointing its exact orbital inclination with certainty was a monumental challenge. The attribution of a polar orbit to the Black Knight seems to have solidified in the retelling, added later as the legend evolved to make it more formidable and technologically inexplicable. It is a classic feedback loop where a compelling detail is repeated so often it becomes accepted fact, even without the original documents to support it. So we are left with a haunting question. Was the Black Knight's polar orbit a genuine, early reported anomaly that confirmed its otherworldly origins, or was it a piece of technological embroidery, stitched onto the myth later to make the story fit our idea of a perfect silent watcher? This idea of a 13,000-year-old probe connects the Black Knight to one of the most provocative narratives of our time, the ancient astronaut theory. Popularized by authors like Erich von Däniken, this theory suggests that extraterrestrial visitors profoundly influenced human development in the distant past. If the satellite were indeed a relic of such a visit, it would transform from a mere object into the ultimate piece of evidence, a piece of hardware left in orbit as a final testament to that primordial encounter. This framework weaves the mystery of the stars directly into the tapestry of our own ancient history. It offers a potential explanation for so many of humanity's enduring puzzles. How did ancient cultures build monuments with a precision we can barely achieve today? Why do myths from every corner of the globe speak of gods descending from the heavens in fiery chariots? The Black Knight in this grand cosmic story becomes the missing link, the physical artifact that connects our mythological past to our technological present. It is the silent, orbiting counterpart to every so-called out-of-place artifact, from the Antikythera mechanism's complex gears to the massive, perfectly cut stones at Puma Punku. The appeal is immense, for it offers a single, elegant solution to a host of disparate mysteries. It tells us we are not alone and that we never have been. It suggests our entire history is part of a much larger, older, and more spectacular cosmic drama, with a silent, dark sentinel forever circling as its most enduring symbol. Yet for all the compelling narratives and grainy photographs, science offers a much more grounded, if less thrilling, explanation. The human brain is a pattern recognition machine hardwired to find meaning in chaos. This psychological phenomenon is called pareidolia. It is the reason we see a man in the moon, a face in the clouds, or the Virgin Mary on a piece of toast. In the featureless, high-contrast void of space, this tendency goes into overdrive. A tumbling, irregular piece of debris, lit by the harsh, unfiltered light of the sun, can easily be misinterpreted by our brains as something structured, something designed. We are not seeing an alien probe, we are simply being human, connecting dots that were never meant to be connected. The now famous photograph from the Endeavour mission is a perfect case study in this. While it looks like a jagged technological artifact, NASA's identification of it as a lost thermal blanket is entirely consistent with the visual evidence. These blankets are not simple sheets of cloth. They are complex assemblies of layered foil and insulation, often with stiff backing and segmented sections. When one tears loose and begins to tumble in zero gravity, it does not flutter like a flag. It moves as a rigid, angular mass, its shiny layers reflecting light in strange ways, creating the illusion of hard edges and artificial construction. It is space trash, but to our pattern-seeking minds, it is a messenger from the stars. Consider the vast orbital graveyard circling our planet. There are thousands of catalogued objects, from discarded rocket boosters the size of a school bus to dead satellites with sprawling solar panel arrays. A panel that has broken loose from an old spacecraft spinning slowly end over end would present a flat, dark silhouette that could be mistaken for a shield or a plaque. A fragment of a multi-layered insulation blanket, like the one lost from Endeavour, would appear as a black, crumpled shape. Even something as mundane as a lost tool bag, as astronauts have experienced, becomes a mysterious, self-contained object drifting through the void. These are not secrets, they are the inevitable debris of our own spacefaring ambitions. The silence from the Black Knight is not the silence of an ancient watchman, but the simple, empty silence of inanimate junk. So we are faced with a choice between two very different realities. One is a universe where an ancient civilization left a sentinel in our skies, a mystery waiting to be solved. The other is a universe where we are alone, surrounded by the ghostly remains of our own technology, and our own minds are the greatest tricksters of all. This tendency to see a single, mysterious entity reveals a fundamental pattern in how we process the unknown. The Black Knight was never just one thing, it became a catch-all term, a legendary name slapped onto any unexplained blip on a radar screen or dark shape glimpsed by an astronaut. The early days of the space race were a chaotic ballet of secret launches and unannounced objects, a perfect environment for a composite legend to be born. Consider the Soviet Cosmos satellite program. This was not a single mission but a vast, sprawling series of launches, many with deeply classified military purposes. These satellites would appear in orbit without any public announcement, their designs and objectives shrouded in state secrecy. To Western tracking stations and amateur sky watchers, a previously unseen Cosmos satellite tumbling through the void, its solar panels catching the light in an unfamiliar way, was indistinguishable from an unknown object. It was not a mysterious alien probe, it was a secret Soviet one, but in the absence of information, the label Black Knight was readily applied. Each new, unidentified satellite reinforced the myth, as if the same silent night was being spotted again and again. The legend grew not from a single sighting, but from a constellation of misidentifications, all lumped together under one ominous title. This conflation was almost inevitable. The pressure of the Cold War meant that neither superpower was fully transparent about what they were putting into space. The United States was doing the same, launching spy satellites and experimental craft under veils of classification. The sky was suddenly filled with traffic, and no one was sharing a complete manifest. When you combine this institutional secrecy with the limited resolution of early tracking technology and the natural human desire for a compelling story, you have a recipe for a modern myth. The Black Knight became the symbolic container for all the anxiety and wonder of that era, a single explanation for a dozen different mundane realities. It was simpler to believe in one ancient watcher than to untangle the complex web of secrets and debris we ourselves had created. So we must ask, did we discover a mystery, or did we assemble one from the spare parts of our own hidden conflicts and fledgling steps into the cosmos? The legend of the Black Knight truly solidified not in scientific journals, but on the vibrant, pulpy pages of science fiction. Long before the internet, magazines like Amazing Stories and Weird Tales served as the primary incubators for cosmic mystery. Writers, inspired by those early newspaper reports of unknown satellites, seized upon the name and the chilling premise. They transformed the vague radar contact into a tangible, menacing presence, a silent ship from a dead world or a watchful probe from a rival galactic empire. These stories gave the phenomenon a visual identity and a narrative thrust that pure speculation could never achieve. Comics followed suit, with heroes like Superman and the Fantastic Four confronting the dark satellite, always depicting it as a sleek, technologically advanced artifact of immense power. This was not passive reporting, it was active myth-making. Each new story layered on more detail, more menace, and more cosmic significance, cementing the Black Knight's image in the public consciousness far more effectively than any news bulletin ever could. Then came the digital age, and with it, a new kind of storytelling arena. Television shows like The X-Files, with its foundational motto of trust no one, provided the perfect narrative home for the legend. An episode dedicated to the Black Knight was not just entertainment, it was a form of validation for believers, presenting the government cover-up and the ancient artifact theory as a compelling, dramatic truth. The show's gritty, paranoid tone became the default tone for the entire mystery. But the real explosion happened with the rise of the internet. Online forums and later, YouTube channels became the global campfire where the story was endlessly retold and reshaped. A grainy photograph could be analyzed pixel by thousands of amateur sleuths. A forgotten radio transcript from the 1920s could be rediscovered and presented as shocking new evidence. The algorithm learned that mystery drives engagement, and so it fed the legend, connecting disparate dots from Nikola Tesla to ancient astronauts into a seamless, clickable narrative. This constant, crowdsourced amplification did something remarkable. It turned a collection of unconnected anecdotes and misidentified objects into a single, cohesive modern myth. The Black Knight was no longer just a satellite, it became a symbol. It represents our deepest anxieties about being watched, our lingering questions about our own history, and our timeless fascination with the idea that we are not alone in the universe. The story endures not because the evidence is strong, but because the story itself is simply too compelling to let go. The digital frontier of the 1990s gave the old legend a new global stage. Forums and early websites buzzed with the story, but it was a single image that truly launched the Black Knight into the modern consciousness. The photograph from the STS-88 mission, a dark shape tumbling against the Earth, began to circulate with a life of its own. Stripped of its original, mundane context as a lost thermal blanket, the image was presented in grainy isolation. It was shared and re-shared across countless websites, each post amplifying the mystery without the burden of NASA official explanation. This was no longer a technical photograph for engineers. It was a digital ghost story, a piece of visual evidence that felt irrefutable to anyone scrolling through their computer screen in the dark. The sheer, visceral impact of that dark, jagged object in the void was more powerful than any scientific paper or historical document. It was proof you could see, and in the early internet, seeing was believing. This single image became the foundational artifact for a new generation of believers, a rallying point that transformed the legend from a niche interest into a viral phenomenon. This digital resurrection was then supercharged by the very architecture of the platforms that followed. When YouTube and other social media sites rose to prominence, their algorithms operated on a simple, powerful principle: engagement is king. Mysterious, thrilling narratives about ancient aliens and government cover-ups are inherently more engaging than a dry, 5-minute explanation about orbital debris and thermal blanket composition. The algorithm learned this quickly. It began to connect the dots for viewers, suggesting a video about the Black Knight after one about Nikola Tesla, and then another about ancient pyramids. It created a personalized, endless rabbit hole of cosmic mystery. Content creators, understanding what the algorithm favored, produced thousands of videos with compelling thumbnails and dramatic narration, each one layering new speculation onto the old story. The scientific explanation became a brief, often dismissive footnote in a much more exciting saga. This created a powerful feedback loop. The more people watched and shared the mysterious version of the story, the more the algorithm promoted it, and the more relevant the legend became. The Black Knight was no longer surviving on the fringes. It was being actively curated and delivered to millions, ensuring its immortality in the digital age for audiences who had never even heard of long-delayed echoes or 1950s newspaper reports. The mystery was not just being remembered, it was being remade over and over into the perfect story for our time. So where is the Black Knight today with all our modern eyes on the sky? This is perhaps the most critical question for the legend. We now have a global network of radar and optical sensors, a system so precise it can track a softball-sized object over 20,000 miles away. This space surveillance network maintains a constantly updated catalog of every single piece of debris, every defunct satellite, and every spent rocket body orbiting our planet. That catalog holds hundreds of thousands of objects, and not one of them is listed as an unknown 13,000-year-old alien probe. Any object large enough to be the legendary Black Knight, something substantial enough to have reflected those early radio signals or been seen by astronauts, would be one of the most well-documented and tracked items in space. Its orbit would be public knowledge, its path predictable by any amateur astronomer with a laptop. Yet no such object exists in the official records. The silence from this vast, high-tech monitoring system is deafening. Beyond government networks, consider the global army of amateur astronomers. Their telescopes, often equipped with sophisticated cameras and software, scan the heavens every night. They routinely track classified government satellites, often deducing their purpose based on orbit and behavior. A large, dark object in a polar orbit would be a prime target for observation, a trophy for any sky watcher. Its image would be splashed across the internet in hours. The fact that not a single credible modern photograph of this specific satellite exists creates a massive hole in the myth. If it were real, we would see it, track it, and photograph it with an ease that would have been unimaginable in the 1950s. The very technology that could finally prove the Black Knight's existence has instead rendered its most tangible form invisible, leaving us with only echoes from a less observant time. Our need for the Black Knight reveals something fundamental about ourselves. We are hardwired for mystery, for stories that reach beyond the dry facts of our existence. A silent, ancient object watching us from the void is not just a puzzle, it is a narrative that feels profoundly significant. It taps into a deep psychological instinct known as agent detection. For our ancestors on the savannah, assuming a rustle in the grass was a predator rather than just the wind was a matter of survival. That same instinct now operates when we look at the stars. A strange signal, an anomalous photograph, our minds immediately jump to an intelligent cause, to a someone rather than a something. We instinctively feel that a deliberate, watchful presence is behind the mystery, because for most of human history, that kind of assumption kept us alive. This myth also offers a comforting alternative to a potentially lonely universe. The idea that we are the sole intelligent beings in a vast, empty cosmos can be a terrifying thought. The Black Knight legend directly counters that fear. It suggests not only that we are not alone, but that we never have been. It proposes that an advanced civilization took an interest in us long ago, perhaps even guided us, leaving behind a calling card as proof. This transforms human history from a random, isolated accident into a potential chapter in a much grander cosmic story. It is emotionally satisfying to believe that our ancient past holds spectacular, lost secrets, that the pyramids or other marvels were gifts from the stars rather than just the products of human ingenuity. This narrative gives us a sense of cosmic importance, a connection to something greater than ourselves. When faced with a choice between a cold, scientific explanation about space debris and a warm, thrilling story about an ancient sentinel, our hearts are often drawn to the tale that makes the universe feel more mysterious, more intentional, and far less lonely. The evidence may point one way, but our deepest instincts pull us irresistibly toward the legend. This archetype of a silent celestial watcher is not unique to our modern age. Across countless cultures and millennia, humanity has looked to the heavens and seen the same pattern, a powerful presence observing us from above. Ancient mythologies are filled with stories that feel like different dialects of the same cosmic language. The Dogon people of Mali, for instance, possess a creation myth that has stunned researchers. Their oral traditions, passed down for generations, speak of amphibious beings called the Nommo who came from the star system Sirius. The most baffling part, the Dogon reportedly knew, long before modern telescopes confirmed it, that Sirius is not one star but a binary system, a fact invisible to the naked human eye. How could an isolated tribe possess such precise astronomical knowledge without a silent, external source of information? On the other side of the world, the ancient Indian epics, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, describe Vimanas in vivid detail. These were not metaphorical chariots of the gods, but complex flying machines said to be powered by Mercury and roaring like lions. The texts recount aerial battles and journeys to the stars, detailing technologies that feel eerily familiar to our own understanding of aerospace. Even the biblical book of Ezekiel opens with a vision of a magnificent wheel within a wheel, descending from the sky with a brilliance like polished brass, a description that many have reinterpreted as a startlingly accurate encounter with a structured technological craft. These stories, separated by vast oceans and centuries, all point to the same profound human experience, the sensation of being watched, guided, or visited by intelligences from the cosmos. The Black Knight is simply the latest character in this enduring drama. It is the modern, technological incarnation of that ancient sky god, the celestial chariot reimagined for an era of satellites and radio waves. It fulfills the same deep psychological need, transforming the cold, empty void into a place of intention and presence. We have replaced the fiery chariot of Elijah with a dark, tumbling satellite, but the core of the story remains unchanged. Something is up there, and it is watching us. This connection suggests that the true mystery may not be the object itself, but something deep within us, a timeless human yearning to look up at the stars and feel, against all odds, that we are seen. But this persistent lack of official proof is precisely what fuels the most enduring part of the legend, the conspiracy. If the Black Knight is real, why has no government ever admitted it? The answer, for many, is a web of deliberate suppression. Theorists point to a pattern of silenced signals and hidden data. They suggest that after Nikola Tesla and the amateur radio enthusiasts first made contact, their findings were quickly classified. The very radio frequencies the object was said to transmit on were allegedly declared off-limits, scrubbed from public logs to prevent further listening. Classified satellite imagery forms another pillar of this belief. We know spy satellites capture incredibly detailed pictures of objects in orbit, yet no clear image of the Black Knight has ever been released. For believers, this is not an absence of evidence, but evidence of a cover-up. The clearest photos exist, they argue, locked away in a vault deemed too unsettling for public consumption. This narrative is punctuated by stories of whistleblowers, former intelligence officers or aerospace engineers who supposedly came forward with fragments of the truth, only to be discredited, transferred to remote posts, or intimidated into silence. Their retractions are seen not as admissions of falsehood, but as proof of the pressure applied by unseen authorities. The conspiracy theory is built on a foundation that is remarkably resilient because it is unfalsifiable. The complete absence of concrete evidence is not a weakness in the theory, but its ultimate strength. It is presented as the hallmark of a perfectly executed suppression campaign. If you cannot find a clear photo, it is because they have hidden them all. If a whistleblower changes their story, it is because they were threatened. The very silence from official channels becomes the loudest confirmation of the truth. This creates a closed loop of belief, immune to conventional debunking. Why would governments go to such lengths? The proposed motives are as vast as the mystery itself. Perhaps acknowledging an alien probe would shatter global religions and create societal chaos. Maybe the technology on board is so advanced that admitting we cannot access or understand it would be a geopolitical admission of weakness in the eyes of rival nations. Or possibly the truth is even darker, that the Black Knight is not a benign observer but a warning or a countdown clock we are not meant to understand. This conspiracy framework transforms the mystery from a scientific question into a moral one. The central conflict is no longer humanity versus the unknown, but the courageous seeker of truth versus a powerful, secretive establishment. It is a story that resonates deeply in our modern age, giving a cosmic scale to our innate distrust of authority and our desire to believe that someone, somewhere, knows the real answers we are all searching for. This deliberate fabrication of evidence casts a long shadow over the entire mystery. Among the most persistent forgeries are audio recordings that claim to capture the Black Knight signal. These clips, often shared on video platforms, feature a series of rhythmic, pulsing beeps and oscillating tones that sound precisely like the artificial transmissions we would expect from an alien probe. They are compelling and eerie, designed to send a chill down your spine. Yet a closer technical analysis reveals their earthly origins. The patterns are too perfectly looped, the frequencies too clean, and the digital artifacts within the audio files point to modern sound editing software, not a signal traveling through the vacuum of space. These recordings are a digital stage play, crafted to sound exactly like our collective imagination believes an ancient satellite should sound. Another common hoax involves doctored photographs. Clever image editors take genuine pictures from NASA missions and digitally insert a dark, angular object into the starfield. These fakes are often convincing at a glance, playing on our expectations of what the satellite should look like. The creators then present these altered images as leaked evidence or enhanced stills that the agency does not want you to see. The motivation behind these hoaxes is a complex web of human desire. For some, it is a simple, desperate grab for attention in the crowded digital landscape. A sensational story about a mysterious satellite, backed by a seemingly concrete piece of evidence, can generate thousands of views, likes, and shares, offering a fleeting taste of internet fame. For others, the motivation is ideological. They are true believers in a specific narrative, such as the ancient astronaut theory, and they see these fabrications as a necessary tool. In their minds, they are not lying, but creating a gateway truth, a piece of evidence compelling enough to shake people from their complacency and lead them to question the official story. They believe the ends justify the means, that if a fake recording convinces someone to look deeper into the real mystery, then the deception was worthwhile. The damage caused by this fabricated evidence is profound. It acts as a poison pill for legitimate research. When a curious investigator or journalist stumbles upon the Black Knight legend, they are immediately bombarded with a mixture of historical anecdotes, scientific debunkings, and these outright hoaxes. The sheer effort required to sift through it all is overwhelming. A genuine, unexplained signal from the 1920s becomes devalued when it is placed next to a digitally synthesized audio file from 2010. This noise makes it easy for skeptics to dismiss the entire phenomenon as the product of hoaxers and gullible minds, tarring every aspect of the mystery with the same brush. The forgeries create a carnival atmosphere where genuine inquiry is drowned out by the loudest and most sensational claims, making it nearly impossible to have a sober conversation about what might actually be hidden in the historical record. The vast emptiness of space is not truly empty, of course, and our own familiar cosmic neighborhood provides its own cast of celestial actors capable of creating profound illusions. Before we mapped the heavens with precision, ordinary events in the sky could easily be mistaken for extraordinary visitors. Consider the planet Venus, often called our sister world. On a clear night, it can be the brightest object in the sky after the moon, a piercing, steady point of light. But from the perspective of a moving aircraft or even a person watching from the ground over time, Venus can perform a strange trick. Because it is so distant, its position appears fixed relative to the moving clouds or a fast-moving jet. This creates the uncanny sensation that the brilliant planet is pacing the aircraft, a silent, unwavering escort that seems to defy the laws of physics. To an observer in the 1950s unfamiliar with this parallax effect, the sight of a bright light apparently tailing a high-altitude plane could easily be logged as a confirmed sighting of an unknown satellite, a silent sentinel keeping watch. Then there are the more dramatic and fleeting performers, the Earth grazers. These are not your typical shooting stars that streak across the sky in a blink. An Earth grazer is a special kind of meteor, a piece of cosmic dust or rock that enters our atmosphere at a very shallow angle, like a stone skipping across a pond. Instead of burning up quickly in a direct plunge, it skims along the upper atmosphere for hundreds of miles. This creates a spectacular, slow-moving light show that can last for many seconds, sometimes even a minute or more. The fireball can appear to change color, pulse with intensity, and move at a deceptively controlled pace. Imagine a farmer in the 1940s looking up at the night sky and witnessing a brilliant, slow-gliding orb of light tracing the curve of the Earth. It moves with a purpose that feels anything but random. Without the context of meteor science, this breathtaking event would not be recorded as a natural space rock. It would be remembered as a sighting of a craft, a silent, burning night on a patrol of the high frontier. These natural phenomena, from the steady escort of a planet to the majestic sail of a skipping meteor, provided a ready-made gallery of mysteries. They were the raw material for a legend, waiting for a story like the Black Knight to give them a name and a purpose. Those early radio enthusiasts were pioneers in a new, invisible wilderness, and the language they used to describe their work was inherently romantic. They spoke not of modulating carrier waves, but of listening to the stars, of plucking voices from the void. This poetic framing created a mindset perfectly primed for wonder. When a strange echo returned minutes after a transmission, it was not a mere atmospheric glitch, it felt like a reply. Modern science, however, allows us to revisit those mysterious long-delayed echoes with a clearer understanding of the medium itself. The ionosphere, that dynamic layer of our upper atmosphere, is far from a simple, stable mirror. It is a turbulent sea of charged particles, constantly churned by solar winds and cosmic radiation. Under certain rare and complex conditions, it is theorized that a radio signal can become trapped. Imagine shouting into a vast, echoing canyon, but instead of one immediate echo, the sound waves bounce between distant rock faces, taking a long, looping path before finally returning to your ears. Scientists propose that something analogous can happen in the ionosphere. A signal might enter a kind of magnetic duct or a traveling ionospheric disturbance, a ripple in this charged layer that carries the transmission on a much longer journey around the Earth before it finally escapes and descends back to the ground. The delay of several seconds perfectly matches the travel time for such an extended atmospheric detour. This explanation was simply not within the grasp of early 20th century radio science. They knew the ionosphere reflected signals, but its full, chaotic complexity was a mystery. The tools to model these exotic propagation modes did not exist, leaving a vacuum that the human imagination was all too eager to fill. The cold, technical truth of plasma physics and solar weather patterns struggles to compete with the visceral thrill of a ghostly voice answering from the depths of space. We are left with a fascinating cultural artifact, a testament to how our tools and our terminology shape the mysteries we believe we have uncovered. Does understanding the ionospheric canyon make the echo any less beautiful? Or does it simply transfer the wonder from the message to the intricate, invisible machinery of our own world? The legend of the Black Knight has long escaped the confines of conspiracy forums, finding a powerful new home in the creative arts where it serves as a potent modern archetype. Its stark, silent shape has been immortalized on the covers of rock albums and in the lyrics of progressive metal bands, often representing the ultimate outsider, a lonely observer forever separated from the world it watches. This visual of a dark, angular object against the blue marble of Earth is a gift to digital artists who render it in stunning detail, sometimes as a menacing predator and other times as a melancholic relic. It is this very ambiguity that makes the symbol so versatile. For a songwriter, the Black Knight can be a metaphor for isolation, the feeling of being disconnected from everyone else, watching life from a distance. For a novelist, it becomes the perfect plot device, an ancient puzzle box left in orbit, holding the secrets to humanity's past or the key to its future. The symbol taps directly into universal human anxieties about surveillance, the fear of being constantly watched by an unseen presence, whether it be a government, a corporation, or something far older. But it also speaks to our profound sense of curiosity and our longing for connection with something greater than ourselves. Each painting, each song, each story that features this silent sentinel does more than just tell a tale. It reinforces the myth, weaving its threads deeper into the fabric of our collective imagination. Art does not ask for proof, it thrives on emotion and theme. And the Black Knight provides a perfectly blank canvas upon which we can project our deepest fears and our most wondrous hopes for the cosmos. While official channels remain silent, the search for the Black Knight has found a vibrant new home in the digital town square. Across forums and social media platforms, a global network of amateur sleuths and citizen scientists has taken up the hunt. These modern investigators are not waiting for a government disclosure. They are actively sifting through the data themselves, armed with laptops and an unshakable passion for the unknown. They meticulously analyze public satellite tracking databases, looking for any object with an anomalous orbit that does not match known spacecraft or debris. They download thousands of raw images from NASA public archives, spending hours scanning the star-filled backgrounds for a single dark, irregular shape that could be the legendary Sentinel. This is a decentralized, crowdsourced investigation on a scale that would have been unimaginable just a few decades ago. The dedication is immense, a testament to the powerful allure this mystery still holds. Yet this very passion creates a fascinating psychological trap, one known as confirmation bias. When you spend hundreds of hours searching for something, you are far more likely to see it in any piece of ambiguous data. A blurry pixel in a deep space photograph becomes a definitive silhouette. A glitch in a satellite's telemetry data is interpreted as an intentional course correction. The human brain is brilliant at finding patterns even when none exist, and when your heart is set on a particular outcome, it can connect dots that were never meant to be connected. This constant, hopeful reinterpretation of noise as signal is what keeps the legend breathing. Each new potential discovery, even those quickly debunked by others in the community, fuels the collective belief that the truth is still out there, just one more day to download away. The mystery endures not in spite of the lack of proof, but because of the endless human-driven quest to find it. The truth of the Black Night lies not in a single photograph or signal, but in the delicate balance between our deepest hopes and the unyielding nature of evidence. On one side of the scale, we place the undeniable power of the mystery. The early reports from respected figures like Nikola Tesla and the baffling long-delayed echoes created a foundation of genuine intrigue that cannot be easily dismissed. The grainy photograph from the Endeavour mission is visually arresting, a dark shape against our world that feels instinctively like more than just space junk. These elements form a compelling story, a narrative of an ancient watcher that resonates with something primal within us. It is a tale that speaks to our curiosity and our desire for a cosmos filled with meaning. Now place on the other side of the scale the overwhelming weight of scientific scrutiny. Every strange radio echo has a plausible explanation in the complex behavior of our own ionosphere. Every mysterious visual sighting aligns perfectly with the countless pieces of human-made debris that clutter our orbital backyard, from tumbling insulation blankets to discarded rocket stages. Our most advanced tracking networks, which can spot a screw drifting in the void, have never catalogued this legendary object. And perhaps most damning of all are the deliberate hoaxes, the fabricated audio clips and doctored images that poison the well of genuine inquiry. When you step back and look at this complete picture, the scales tip decisively. The most logical, evidence-based conclusion is that the Black Night is not a singular alien artifact, but a powerful modern myth. It is a composite legend, a mosaic pieced together from Cold War anxieties, misidentified satellites, the natural quirks of radio science, and our own hardwired tendency to see patterns and intention in the unknown. Yet to call it a myth is not to diminish its importance. This legend endures because it answers a profound human need. It transforms the cold, empty silence of space into a place of story and possibility. We may logically understand that the dark shape in the photograph is a lost thermal blanket, but a part of us will always wonder, what if it is not? And in that space between the known and the unknown, the legend of the silent night lives on. From the crackling static of Nikola Tesla's laboratory to the grainy glow of a computer screen, the journey of the Black Night is an epic of human imagination. We followed a trail of mysterious radio echoes through Cold War headlines and astronaut photographs, all the way to its digital resurrection in the age of viral myths. We have stood at the crossroads of science and legend, weighing the logical explanations of space debris against the thrilling possibility of an ancient sentinel. Yet through it all, the evidence points not to a physical object but to a psychological one. The true power of this legend has never been its reality, but its profound role as a mirror. It reflects our deepest hopes that we are not alone in the universe, our fears of being watched by unseen forces, and our boundless curiosity about the cosmos and our own forgotten past. It is a story we have told ourselves for generations, a celestial canvas onto which we project our greatest questions. So as we look up at the silent, star-filled sky, we are left with one final haunting thought. Perhaps the real mystery is not what is orbiting Earth, but why we are so determined to put a night in the empty blackness of space. What do you think the enduring appeal of the black night says about us? Share your own thoughts and theories in the comments below, and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest mysteries.